All right, welcome back. I'm your host, Pat Bradley, here once again with my co-host, Karl, Mann, Tommy Sullivan, and this is the Three-Man Rush Podcast, a casual NFL gambling podcast for casual, very casual NFL gamblers. Quick word of advice as we open up here. As always, we are not professionals, and nothing we say should be considered gambling or financial advice. We're simply a bunch of passionate football fans who enjoy betting on the games and whose wives and significant others do not yet have access to our bank accounts. Although, guys, after last week's debacle, they honestly probably should. Let's hope they're not listening right now. Karl, Tommy, what's up, boys? We're back, week 2.
What's going on?
Haven't gotten.
Tommy had a good week.
Tommy did have a good week. We haven't gotten the cancellation notice from the network just yet. How are we feeling? That was a pretty crazy week 1.
I'm feeling pretty good. I think the final tally was 9-7. So if it puts me in the green, so I have a little bit more to spend this week. So the significant other's pretty happy.
We love to see that. We love to see it. We'll call it first place in the division. And you know what? We don't even need to mention right now how Karl and Pat did last week. We'll get to that eventually. But as we open up, before we dive in too deep, I'm just going to remind you, if you have a problem with gambling, or you think you may have a problem with gambling, or someone you know might have a problem with gambling, call the National Problem Gambling Helpline Network at 1-800-522-4700. Or Karl, what's the speed dial for you?
Speed dial number 3, baby. That's it.
Speed dial number 3. Please gamble responsibly. All right, just a quick reminder here, format of the show. We're going to break down every single game on the NFL schedule, week 2 of the NFL season this week. We are picking results against the spread. If you are a first-time listener, welcome. Thank you. If you're a return listener, thank you more. I mean, I don't know. Hopefully, well, we'll get into some of the results here, but hopefully you are in the green like Tommy as well. Our pods are going to drop Thursday nights in time for the Thursday night football game, and we will be giving you our favorite bets of the week, maybe even a little parlay or two, just a dash of fun. But first, let's recap a wild week 1 in the NFL. All right, for starters, I told you guys week 1 is one of the hardest to bet, in my opinion. I always think it's one of the hardest to bet. I wasn't going to say this last week. Maybe I should have, but like I said, not gambling advice. I always struggle in week 1 because just when you think you know a team, something crazy like the ending of that Monday Night Football game last night, we're recording on a Tuesday, by the way, something like that happens, which is just pure chaos. And, oh, by the way, in case you think it gets any easier in week 2, I'm here to tell you that it does not. Why? A couple of reasons. We really don't know who is better than who yet. We think we do. We're going to talk about it here during the pod, but we don't really know. We've also now seen a handful of injuries, Ryan Fitzpatrick fans, and there's going to be adjustment made. So teams that were bad could be better. Teams that were better could look not as good and maybe not cover a spread, even if they went out right. So really, to put this into context for you guys, we're going to talk about this, okay? So underdogs in week 1 this year went 12-4 against the spread. Las Vegas sitting back in their executive chairs, laughing at us hysterically because they took all of our money. 12-4 against the spread. 9 underdogs won outright. And before the Ravens lost last night, remember they were favored going into that game on Monday Night Football by 4. Tragic ending. Don't want to talk about it. Still not recovered. When it was just 8 underdogs who had won outright, that had not happened in week 1 of the NFL season in over 35 years. Okay, 5 dogs won on the road, including the Miami Dolphins, which means Karl, Mann, show us the swag.
Here we go.
You said if the Dolphins pulled off the upset, quote unquote upset, you were going to wear the Dolphins hat for the pod. So looking good. Looking good
Yeah,
there.
it was either the like corduroy, like throwback. I don't know what was it, 70s maybe Dolphins era, from like my uncle when he was a child, or the visor. I don't know the
Coach
visor. What do you
Karl.
think?
I'm Team
Coach
Visor.
Karl.
Yeah, another
Well,
underdog on the road up here. My girlfriend's team.
the
Kay,
Pittsburgh Steelers.
shout out.
So let's recap again. Let's
He can't even compliment the Steelers without putting his head in his hands.
Listen,
So
she was at the Patriots game with me. We were tailgating, watching that game, and shitting on me the whole time because she listened to the podcast. Obviously, I mean, who wouldn't listen to this podcast? So,
of course,
she was like, she didn't hear us record it, but she listened to it after we put it out on Thursday, and she was not happy with our reaction to the Steelers game. Well, not reaction, but I guess our prediction for the game. And yeah, she let me hear it all day on Sunday.
I'm
and
sure
Monday.
there's a couple. Sure, there's a couple quotes in there that
there. While we're at it here, let's just dive right in because I like to call this little segment "Quotes of the Week," and this will lead us really well right into this Steelers game, which was tragic for everybody on this podcast, especially those of us dating a Steelers fan. So, quote of the week last week, quote, "This screams a 4-INT game for Ben Roethlisberger." One, Tommy Sullivan, ladies and gentlemen, and not to be outdone, quote, "The Bills are going to smother the Steelers," from one Karl Mann, who also mentioned that Pittsburgh was ranked 20th, again, 20th, bottom third of the league almost in his personal power rankings. Pretty crazy. I'm going to tell you right now, I almost picked the Steelers to cover. No excuses. I didn't.
Is this horseshoes or hand grenades?
Horseshoes and hand grenades, right? Okay, I didn't do it. Almost doesn't count in this scenario, and I lost money. But I do have to say, Karl, your girlfriend asked me for an apology. Your Pittsburgh Steelers fan girlfriend asked me for an apology at the end of that game, and I just kind of ghosted her. I didn't respond. I couldn't do it. I won't do it. I will not do it. I stick to what I said. But I would like to apologize to one Ben Roethlisberger in a little section I like to call apology letters. So, folks, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read this. It's pre-written. Don't judge me here. I just, I'm a little nervous. I just need to get this off my chest and apologize to Ben. Dear Big Ben, last week on the 3-Man Rush podcast, I essentially called you fat and apathetic and wondered if you'd just be collecting a check. I questioned your motivation and your willingness to win, and while your defense did a lot of the dirty work, you showed out in the second half of a tough game on the road and were essentially everything that I thought Aaron Rodgers would be this week. Excellent, motivated, and ready to make a statement. I'm sorry I doubted you, even though I wouldn't blame you for being fat and apathetic. If I had also played for coaches like Mike Tomlin for so long, I would probably feel the same way. Ben, sincerest apologies, best wishes, warmest regards, Pat. Guys, what the hell happened to the Buffalo Bills this week? At home, opening the season against the Steelers, we were so convinced that they had this on lock. There's another quote in there where Karl basically said, pray, I think, maybe, to paraphrase. What the heck happened, Karl? What did you see out of this game last week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I saw the same game that everyone else saw, and I think one thing that went overlooked was Mike Tomlin as an underdog is just like unreal. Like he's really good at getting his team up, ready to play as an underdog. It seems like they always, shit the bed whenever they're a favorite and they should win, but as an underdog, it seems like they can always pull it through. So should have taken that into account, and Josh Allen had a lot of growth last season in front of no fans. So, opening up the season in front of Bills Mafia, it was rowdy. Maybe it just got in his head a little bit, and going back to that earlier season when he didn't play so well in front of the big crowd. So we'll see how it goes throughout the season. But I don't know. Anytime the Steelers are an underdog, I'll take them from now on. That's why I got my my little losers banner up here. It's on the wall of shame.
Right next to the Buccaneers flag and on the wall of fame, right?
That's right.
Tommy, what'd you see?
So I was going to talk more about the Bills as we got into the games next week, but I don't think this is going to be something that will go away for a little bit. But we'll see. We'll see how the season goes with that. I do think it's funny that in your apology to Big Ben and the Steelers, you crapped on their head coach.
What?
Find a head coach like Mike Tomlin.
I don't know what you're talking about. Well, that, folks, is what we call a teaser there when Tommy is going to talk about the Bills a little bit later. So I will reserve that time for you later on. One more quick apology letter here to frenemy of the pod, Jameis Winston. So really quickly, let me just get this off of my chest, guys. Dear Jameis, last week on the 3-Man Rush podcast, I basically questioned your existence as a human being on this planet. It felt justifiable. It was not. Your receivers ran down those 5 touchdowns as fast as you ran out of that supermarket with those crab legs. I can't believe you did it. Jameis, congratulations, my friend. I don't know if I'm going to pick you every week, but you did kind of impress us, even though you threw for as many yards as I would in an NFL game, despite having 5 touchdowns. So, Jameis, my apologies. Sincerest apologies. Best wishes. Warmest regards. Love, Pat. What? Are we more like
future MVP Jameis Winston?
Future MVP, potentially Jameis Winston. Who was more impressive, the Saints or the Packers? I'm sorry. More impressive. The Saints or less impressive, the Packers. Which one was higher on that scale for you guys? Tommy, what do you think?
Well, let me tell you right now, we can shut down this MVP Jameis talk right before we even start. We were talking about this beforehand, and I said I don't think he threw for 200 yards. I was wrong. He did not throw for 150 yards. He had 14 completions and 5 touchdowns. That is an outlier of all outliers. I am less impressed with. I'm feeding into this narrative that Aaron Rodgers came back just to torpedo the Packers season, and I think that there was more of that than it was the Saints winning.
It's a really hot take, and I like it. You're not the first person I heard say that he came back to torpedo their season. And this is just a villain origin story, if that's the case. Pretty crazy. Karl, what was your reaction?
To that game or to this future MVP race? Because Dak Prescott is on pace for another 10 million yards like he was last season. Let's just hope he doesn't get hurt in week 5 again. So whatever week it was.
Dak Prescott did look pretty good. Not Russell Wilson, quarterback of the Cowboys. Dak Prescott, if you listened last week, it's a little inside joke, as we like to say. Really confusing turnout from the Packers. We were wary of them, but we didn't think that Jameis was going to be good. If you're Tommy, you still don't think he was very good. But 5 touchdowns is 5 touchdowns, and when the Packers play as poorly as they did, a win's a win, right, boys?
Let me clarify. He played well. He did the job to win. He was not anywhere near any of the best players across the league and should not be in any MVP discussions at all right now. And as for Dak's on pace, you are correct. He is unfortunately no longer on pace for 7,000 yards. He's only on pace for a mere 6,850 after week 1. So he's got to step it up.
Speaking of hashtag on pace, if we're going to talk about way too early MVP candidates, let's start with the logical choice, which is no one other than Chandler Jones, who is now on pace for 85 sacks this season for the Arizona Cardinals, who looked pretty good dismantling the Titans last week. Chandler Jones for MVP, guys? I mean, who needs a Defensive Player of the Year trophy when you have 85 sacks on pace?
Mm-hmm. Syracuse's own, baby. Bring it back home. Syracuse's own.
One of a few trades that Bill Belichick has made that nobody talks about that was just awful from the beginning has somehow got worse.
If we're going to talk about real MVP candidates on the Arizona Cardinals, we have to talk about Kyler Murray. He looked phenomenal on Sunday. We talked last week. We specifically mentioned that maybe this is going to be the week one of the MVP campaign that we think that he could eventually have. We saw it happen. Tommy Sullivan took the Cardinals. Karl and I were off that boat. Tommy held the faith. But I'll just ask you guys outright. Is this week one of an MVP campaign, MVP-like campaign for Kyler Murray? We've seen quarterbacks like him win it recently, Lamar Jackson fans, although if you watch Monday Night Football, well, we're not going to talk about it. But we've seen guys like Kyler Murray win recently. So what do we think? Is this going to be the norm moving forward for Kyler and the Cardinals?
I would say that there is definitely potential for an MVP season. It would not surprise me if he hangs in that race for the majority. I don't know if he's going to win it. Obviously, it's only been 1 week, sample sizes and all, but I mean everything he's shown up to date over the past few years. This seems like a perfect time for him to break out and enter that discussion.
Karl, do we disagree?
No, I mean he looked pretty good this past week. I just would like to see it all season long. I mean, he goes for stretches where he's not playing to that potential, and I mean, he's pretty much already eliminating himself. You got to really hold it. I mean, we've seen that with Russell Wilson almost every single year, it seems like, where he has the first 10 games of the season, amazing, falls off in the last 6, and then doesn't have a single MVP vote to his name. So I don't know. I guess we'll see as it goes on. Obviously, this is our way too early MVP predictions, but we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, if you want to talk about the safe choice, it is the best player on the best team who has won a few MVPs before.
One Tom Brady, Patrick Brady Jr.
Oh yeah.
You know, funny you say that because I was pretty convinced when you said the best player on the best team. I really thought you were going to go with Jalen Hurts there because, Tommy, you're pretty high on him and the Eagles after what we saw against the Falcons. Quickly before we dive into some lines here, I ask, are the Eagles legit or are the Falcons just that bad?
Are the Eagles legit or are the Falcons just shit? That's the second.
Put it on a shirt, sell it in the shop. That's the question of the week. What do we think? Tommy, are they legit?
The answer is extremely legit. One of the dumbest things that I said, easily the dumbest, outside of all the quotes, was saying that the Eagles were a bad team. It's very apparent that even though the Falcons are a horrible team, this Eagles team is going to do some damage. I think it's going to be them and the Cowboys in the running for the divisional crown.
Karl, do we agree?
Yeah, I think I'm in the show me boat where they're going to show it to me again against a good team. We'll see how it goes. I mean, the Falcons are the Falcons. I don't think they're going anywhere this season. So if the Eagles can string together a few wins, I mean, they could end up maybe 5-0 to start the season, 4-1. We'll see how it goes. And in the NFC East, anything's possible. I mean, obviously the Cowboys look like they're rolling, but I mean, if they can steal a few division games and roll through the opponents outside, then, I mean, they could be right up there in the playoffs. So, yeah, for sure.
Putting you guys on the spot here because I'm also in the show it to me boat, which leads me to think when we look back on week one of this season, a month from now, 3 months from now, in January maybe even, what's going to be the most shocking result that we say, like, I cannot believe that team just did what it did in week one? I think the Saints could be up there. I want to see it again from Jameis for sure. But for me, the Eagles could be that team. Remember last week, week one, the Jacksonville Jaguars won their game, and then they went 0-15 the rest of the way, on their way to winning the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. I don't think the Eagles are that bad, but in my book, I really think that the Eagles could be a similar team as that. A lot of room to grow for Jalen. We'll see. But what do you guys think? Is there a team that really shocked you outside of those two that we're going to be surprised to see as a week one winner down the road?
I mean, I don't know if mine is like one that the result shocked me, but the fact that the 49ers allowed the Lions to get back in that game gave me a lot of pause about where they're going to be at. And I mean, because I don't think I'm going to look back and be like, wow, I'm surprised that the Lions almost made that a game. I'm going to be more surprised of like, wow, I can't believe are the 49ers that much closer to the Lions than I thought. But that's something that I'm in wait and see mode on.
Yeah, for me, a couple of games, and not necessarily outcomes that surprised me, but we talked about it on the last podcast, was the Cowboys and how they can respond after that first week. Obviously, they had a shot to win the game. They were winning until the end of the game. So, the Cowboys can continue to get back on track after proving it to the Bucs. The Rams in a blowout win against the Bears, not a good team, but really high on the Rams. So if they can keep rolling through teams, build that record up, and then go into the playoff and maybe have a home game coming out of that division would be huge. And then, what, Tommy?
I was a team that all three of us nailed was the Browns.
Yes, and that's what my third team was going to be, was the Browns. You nailed it right on the head. Showing up against the Chiefs, winning for most of the game, let it slip, but again, just proving that they can hang with the big dogs up at the top of the power rankings. So we'll see how it goes throughout the season. Don't sleep on them because they're 0-1 right now. I mean, that record is going to be what it is. It's going to carry with them for a while, but you just got to look back at those losses and where they came from and how they occurred, and make those adjustments on your own when you're looking at the lines and even straight up.
Yep.
All right. Well, with that said, speaking of the lines, let's get to it and look at the lines for week 2. As always, the lines are brought to you by our future friends of the podcast at DraftKings Sportsbook. And if you are listening to this later on in the week, we are recording on a Tuesday night. So these lines are accurate as of about 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. Let's dive in for our Game of the Week category. Kind of slim pickings this week, but I would say, I think we all agree, one of the best games of the week we're expecting is the Dallas Cowboys on the road facing the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are favored by 3 at home. The over-under in that game is 52. Karl, what do we think? I think I know what you're going to take. I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to take, but how do we feel about this game?
Well, who do you think I'm going to take? I want to hear what you think I'm going to take.
You're taking the points on the road all day, baby. All day.
You think I'm going to go out there and pick against the Cowboys?
No,
you're going to pick the Cowboys.
Exactly. It's exactly what I think you're going to do.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah, I'm picking the Cowboys. Points on the road, coming off a big game. I've already bet against other people in this household, so I can't bet against Kayla's dad. So, yeah, give me the Cowboys and the points. Dak Prescott, future MVP. Yeah, let's ride. Take the points. I said that the whole way through the podcast last week, and yeah, I didn't do that. I didn't take the points, and if I had taken the points, I would have been 12-4 or whatever the underdogs were last week. So
that's exactly it.
Taking the points, being smart. Give me the Cowboys.
Tommy, what's your take?
Oh, I'm taking Dallas too. I can't talk as much as I did about Dak last week and not take him in this close of a spread, even especially with the points. So yeah, even though I'm pretty sure Randy Gregory just went on the COVID list today. I could be wrong, but assuming he's back, like that defense is going to have no problems. Well, I mean, obviously it's going to be a tough matchup, but give me the Cowboys.
All right, so I too am going to take the Cowboys. I feel like they're favored in this game. Yeah, a little scary after week 1 if we're all unanimously going to pick one team here. But after what we saw out of the Cowboys last week, I mean, yes, the Chargers look good against what I believe is a pretty legit defense in Washington, D.C., but the Cowboys looked really good. And fans travel well. Cowboys fans travel well. Fans always travel well to L.A., with that beautiful new stadium. It's a great excuse to go check it out. A really cool road game and a beautiful stadium. I mean, what do we think? Like at least 50% of fans there. Karl, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of make the line almost a pick 'em, or even with the Chargers, maybe favorites. But they don't have much of a home field advantage, like you said. If they had any semblance of a home field advantage, I feel like this line would be pretty much spot on. What's it at, 3? So, like, that 3 points you would think would be the home field advantage. I don't think they deserve a full 3 points. So, in a toss-up game, like we talked last week, give me the points. And Dallas showed, what they can be last week. So, show up, move the ball, and put some points up on the board. Because their defense really isn't stopping anyone. They force a lot of turnovers, against the Bucs last week. A couple interceptions. I don't want to say are fluke interceptions. I mean, obviously they happen. You can't take them off the board, but how often does Brady have a multi-interception game? And one of those was a Hail Mary at the end of the half, which, I mean, it goes on the record books, it goes in the stats, but it's not one of those things that affects the outcome of the game at the end of the day. It's that overthrown screen pass, and it's the fumble on the goal line by Godwin that really kind of changes the tide in the game. So if the defense can step up for Dallas and make some plays when they need to, and let Dak eat out in Dallas, we'll be good to roll.
It's a good point. We didn't talk about it much, but not on the pod. We talked about it when it happened. The Cowboys really probably should have won that game if the Buccaneers had been a little bit cleaner. Fewer penalties, not coughing up the ball, especially on the 1 yard line. I mean, maybe they win it easily. But also given that, I think the Cowboys took advantage of the opportunities, which is key to winning in the NFL. Take what the other team gives you and capitalize on it. Mm-hmm. It could have gone either way. I don't even really want to play the devil's advocate here to ask if the Buccaneers defense is as good as we think it is. I think it's way too early. I think, honestly, I really just think that Dak and the Cowboys offense is as potent as we all think it is. And that's all it came down to, a really good offense in a thrilling game against a really good defense. So we'll see how that holds up on the road. But again, all three of us taking the Cowboys and the 3 points here in our game of the week. All right.
One last thing, even with a quiet game from Zeke, they're getting Zach Martin back, so that offensive line is going to get a boost for the running game.
Excellent call as well. Maybe a little piece of advice there for fantasy football or daily fantasy players as well. Check that out on DraftKings too. Hey, company man. I can't say I'm a company man because they don't sponsor us. # not a sponsor. Maybe someday, DraftKings. Maybe someday. All right, moving on to our co-game of the week, although I just think it's going to be entertaining after what we saw Monday night. You never know what you're going to see because we have the Kansas City Chiefs on the road playing the Baltimore Ravens, who had one of the worst losses I think we have ever seen. I'll give you a little bit of background here. The Ravens had not lost a regular season game since 2004 when they were leading by 14 or more points. Okay, that was 98 straight regular season wins when leading by 2 touchdowns and 2 extra points. Of course, as we Patriots fans all know, it's not 98 total because the 2014 playoffs where the Patriots came back from down by 14 points twice. Apologies if you're a Ravens fan listening to this, but not really. So, nonetheless, regular season consistency, and they blew it Monday night. What do we think is going to happen here, Tommy? This is a low line. 3.5 means Vegas. Vegas is just putting it in that Vegas pick'em zone. I mean, tell me, what do you think?
I think this Chiefs defense is good enough to cover Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown, and then outside of that, the Ravens running game. Latavius Murray looked fine. Tyson Williams actually showed a lot of promise considering where he's at in his career, but I think that they're a little bit too injury depleted still, and I think KC is a little too good, and I will take KC in this game.
Karl, you're shaking your head no. Tell me why.
Yeah. I don't know. I think this might be an overreaction line where Kansas City came off a big win against Cleveland. Baltimore is coming off a bad loss against a bad team. It was on the road. So now they get to go home. They get to play in front of their home crowd. They had a lead for a lot of the game. You just mentioned the stats statistically where they haven't lost in a long time under those circumstances. So, I don't know. I think they could give some trouble to Kansas City. We've seen them do it in the past. Sometimes it's worked out. Sometimes it hasn't. And totally different teams, totally different season. Anything could happen. But I don't know. What's my motto here? Give me the money. Give me the points. Taking the points here. Home dogs should be a good matchup. Obviously, again, it's 2 really good teams. And all they got to do is cover by a field goal. So if it's close late, that half point swing over the 3 could make all the difference here in the line. So I'm taking the points.
I don't blame you, but for a combination of reasons, I don't feel good about what I saw last night and how we watched the Ravens not close that game. They choked that game away. We just saw the Chiefs overcome a pretty significant deficit in week one. We know that they know how to close and finish, and they did it against what I think is a much better Browns team, much better than the Ravens, that is. And, I mentioned it last week, and I know that I lost, but, anytime, if you can ever get Patrick Mahomes and this version of the crazy, ridiculous Chiefs offense only laying 3.5 points, you have to take it. You have to take it. It's Chiefs for me. I think they cover. I don't know that it's going to be a blowout. I actually am hoping, and I think this could be a really good game. But at the end of the day, I think Chiefs can pull out even a 4-point victory. To your point, it's going to be close, a little too close for comfort if you're betting on the Ravens or the Chiefs for that matter. I think it's going to be an uncomfortable edge of your seat watch. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. But again, if you get Patrick Mahomes laying only 3.5 points, you got to jump on that as far as I'm concerned. So I am taking the Chiefs. Anything else, boys, that we need to look out for in this game? Tommy.
I have 2 points. As the resident hockey guy on the podcast, I completely overlooked the Vegas factor, especially with that being a new stadium and everything. It was very loud. And even the second point is, even though the Ravens had a 14-point lead, that overtime, that'll always leave a sour taste in my mouth. To let that go on that long and have those many flubs, it's just that is leading the charge as to why I'm picking the Chiefs.
Really a hilarious end of the game. I would have thoroughly enjoyed it if I did not have money on the Ravens. If you didn't see our Instagram account, I had the Ravens in many different bets and parlays last night, everywhere from -3.5 to, the text thread is just a lot of all caps blowing up and swearing, which is what Karl's looking at.
The last thing I received last night was, "I'm out on the Ravens forever." Quote, Pat Bradley. So
and
he's still out.
Today.
He's still out on the Ravens.
It's forever.
He hasn't backed down on that.
Forever.
I'm not out yet. They need another bad loss for me to be out. If they lose this week, I'm still not out, unless it's an absolute blowout. But we'll see.
I'm out. I'm done. Forever. All right. Moving on to our must-watch games of the week. This one should be pretty good, although before we started recording, when we were running through this, I said to you guys, if we were picking this last week, I would have said that this might be the game of the week based on the Indianapolis Colts defense that we expected to show up. But also last week when we talked about the Colts, I said, you know what, Russell Wilson is an enigma, and maybe I'm going to sit here with Karl and eat my words. Tommy called it. He said let Russ cook, and he certainly did. Made that defense not look great. Russell Wilson just doing Russell Wilson things. But Russell Wilson's not in this game anymore. Now it's Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams coming in as 3.5-point favorites into Indianapolis. Over-under in this game is 42.5 points. So Vegas is thinking we are going to see a defensive battle. I can't blame them there. Tommy, what are we making of this game here? Again, Ravens 3.5 points on the road, favored against the Colts.
This is tough for me because I am really high on the Rams this year, but I do think Indianapolis makes a little bit of adjustments this time. Second home game in a row, they don't have to travel at all. So I think this time I'm gonna be on team. Give me the points, and I'll take the Colts here.
How do you agree?
I technically, if I was following my motto, I should be agreeing. I'm thinking the spreads should be closer to about 5-ish, and that obviously has the home field advantage for the Colts. So I think that the Rams are that much better of a team. So I'm actually going to go against the spread. I'm going to take the Rams here, minus points. Dangerous move. I know it's 3.5. It's that hook that I just talked about on the last game, but I don't know. I think we're seeing the reemergence of Matthew Stafford here now that he has people that he can get the ball to in space and let them score. So
I saw a tweet during the game last week. I think it was Bill Barnwell, who I actually really enjoy his work and love reading. A lot of respect for that guy. But something to the effect of it's kind of humorous watching the media sort of recast, say Matthew Stafford had no help for 10 years in Detroit when he had Calvin Johnson, Hall of Fame wide receiver. He's also had guys like a Kenny Golladay and a Marvin Jones over the last few years. He's had some names and some talent come through, but the coaching, the overall team. I mean, you can have the stars, but you can have the horses, but you need the ponies as well. And the ponies have to be good. They can't be sloppy, crappy, and the jockey can't be either. And I don't think the Lions have had a good coach in a long time. Tommy's laughing at my crazy analogy here. But all of that is to say, I think he's got horses. I think he's got ponies. I think he's got jockeys and trainers galore in LA. There's beautiful weather. The man's happy. He looks like a model now. I mean, Matthew Stafford all the way. The Rams are going to be good. Was it Collinsworth on Sunday night gushing over the relationship that Stafford and McVay now have, talking about the different options and things that they can do in their offense, as if Jared Goff was like the dumbest human being that had ever played quarterback in the National Football League, which I don't know, maybe he is. I don't think he is, but just the difference in confidence from what we're seeing from an already pretty confident and ballsy coach in Sean McVay, what we're seeing from Matthew Stafford early on here against what I think all think should be a pretty good Bears defense. I don't see how they don't pull this out. I think the Rams are going to cover on the road against the Colts. It would be ironic if I picked the Colts to cover in the same situation last week, and then now I pick against them and I go 0-2. But I am picking the Rams to cover 3.5 points on the road. Tommy, what do you got?
Sounds like Tommy's on dollar bill island over there.
All of us flipped this time. It was just me with the Seahawks and the Colts, and then I flipped it, and you guys flipped it as well. But yeah, it goes back. Collinsworth is right to gush because it goes back to what I said last week. Sean McVay actually has talent under center for the first time in his head coaching career.
That was maybe my favorite quote of the podcast last week. Like what does Matt Stafford have that Jared Goff does not? And
it's talent. It is talent.
It is talent.
I shouldn't hate on Jared Goff that much, but there is a stark difference between those two players.
Absolutely. I think much more cerebral for Stafford. All right, we can stop gushing about him now and move on to what I think could be an interesting game. The Las Vegas Raiders, I think, showed out a little bit more than we expected them to on Monday Night Football. Clearly, they didn't look great early on, but they got the job done. This week they're traveling to Pittsburgh, and Karl, Mann, you said if you're picking Pittsburgh, there might be some terrible towels. Tommy, you said we're going to pick Pittsburgh at home because we like them a lot more there. This is the opportunity. Steelers favored by 5.5 points over the visiting Las Vegas Raiders. Over-under here is 47 points. Karl, you seem like you are on the fence. Who do we think takes this game?
Who do I think takes the game? The Steelers. Would I bet this? Probably not. I feel like it's too close of a line. It's such an awkward line number. I think like 4.5, 5.5 is right where it should be. I actually think it jumped up right as before we recorded this podcast. I think we originally had it at 5 anyway, it jumped up. So I don't know. It's kind of a stay off it right now at that number. If it goes any higher, maybe I'm taking the Raiders points. If it goes any lower and it gets down to like that 3.5, where I have to hope that it's not the hook, I might take the Steelers. But right now, in an ideal world, staying off it, for the sake of the podcast, I would take the points with the Raiders.
Tommy, let me ask you, is what we saw last night from the Raiders a fluke?
I think it's going to be very matchup dependent for them. And in this particular instance, I think that it all depends on if you can shut down Darren Waller. And I think the Steelers' defense is qualified to do that. And I think once you take that away from Derek Carr and the Raiders' offense as a whole, they don't really have much to show. Ultimately, Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to be the X factor of this game, and I'm taking the Steelers with the taking the Steelers minus 5.5.
Not a Zay Jones fan.
He was good. It's weird because he was good for like a hot second in Buffalo, and then it just fizzled for some reason, and now he's bad. He is good, but I don't know. I'm still going to take the Steelers here.
I think that. Oh, I was going to say.
Ahead, Karl.
I think that this is like a perfect storm of two teams that are just ready for a letdown game coming off those week 1 wins. It sucks that they're playing each other because if they weren't playing each other, I'd be betting against both of these teams, I feel like. So I feel like this is going to be a very bad game with both teams just coming off 2 high wins. And I don't know, Pat, what do you think?
I don't like the line. I don't want to bet it. 5.5 feels too confident for me. But if 5.5 feels too confident, so I'm not going to bet it personally. But for the sake of making a pick on the pod, yeah, I'm going to take the Steelers. I just think they're a better team. I don't think the Raiders are a good team. I do think that the Steelers are a good enough team. The spread makes it interesting. It could be a close game. It could be a blowout. But for the pick, I'm going to go with Pittsburgh this week to cover 5.5 points. They just need to win by a touchdown. The Ravens only needed to win by not a lot, and it didn't happen. So we'll see. Maybe I'm going to look bad 2 weeks in a row betting against the Raiders, but I'm going to go with the Steelers here. Shout out to Kay.
I will also say the over-under here is 47 points, and I'm not going to say that any stat screams anything anymore after my 4 INT little quip last week, but this to me sounds like a very easy under. Bet the under game.
I agree.
Interesting. Okay, moving on. A team we were all really high on, Karl, the Buffalo Bills, I think were maybe number 3 in your power rankings last week. They go on the road this week to Miami to face the Dolphins. The Bills are 3.5-point favorites. Over under here, 48.5. Karl, you lead us off. What do we think is gonna happen with this Bills game?
I don't know. I feel like it's right on the money. It's like where the spread should be. Miami as a home dog is probably where I'm going to live, taking the points. Again, not overly confident. This is one of those lines where I'm not going to touch it. I think it's pretty spot on. It's a tough number. It could go either way. I don't know. Buffalo going down to Miami if it ends up being super hot. Both teams coming off, I don't know, big games last week. Obviously, the Bills lost their game. The Dolphins took care of business against the Patriots. To an extent. Correct. Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the Patriots, I'm sure, because I think we're all a little bit higher on the Patriots than what they showed this past week and a little lower on the Dolphins, even though the record would show otherwise. So, I don't know. It's going to be tough. It's always tough to go down to Miami early in the season, so I'll take Miami with the points. But again, a game that I'm probably not going to put any money on, at least not on the spread.
Tommy?
Yeah, I alluded to this earlier at the beginning of the pod, but I think this Buffalo Bills team is they are giving me shades of Jacksonville after they went to the conference championship a few years ago. I think that this team is low key in disarray. I don't know if they're going to be that bad. Like they're still going to be in contention for a playoffs, but I think that I don't know. There was a lot. They just didn't look like a good team at all. They just didn't look like a good team, and now they're favored somehow on the road in Miami of a team that just won, that played really, really well. I'm not.
I'm willing to call it a fluke last week for the Bills. They clearly have their issues. I don't think their defense is as good as it has been in recent years. We even saw that a little bit last year. They were good enough, but Josh Allen really evolved in that offense, and that's ultimately what brought them where they needed to go. I think the biggest difference here maybe between that Jaguars team and this Bills team is that Josh Allen is not Blake Bortles. I think he's much, much better. So I don't necessarily see them falling off that hard. Are the Bills going to repeat what they did last year? Maybe not. We did question it last week. We asked about them facing a tough first-place schedule for the first time in a long time. But the Dolphins look bad on Sunday. And the Patriots are probably a better team than I gave them credit for last week. Better than even those of us on the pod who did take the Patriots gave them credit for last week. They should have lost the game. The Dolphins should have. I don't know. I agree with Karl that it's a tough place to play early in the season, especially when it's hot in September. I have not looked at the weather report. I'm not even going to look at it right now. I just think 3.5 points, the Bills should be good enough to get that done. So I am going to take Buffalo to cover on the road this week. Anything else in this game?
I thought I can really think of, to be honest. I think I got all my thoughts out there.
Great. Let's move on to our watchable games of the week. First up here, we have the Detroit Lions, the comeback city Detroit Lions upstart on the road going to Green Bay against the Packers, who are favored by a whopping 11 points, yet the over-under here is 48. So Vegas is just saying this is going to be a blowout. The Packers are going to score enough points, and we don't even know if the Lions are going to score points, which feels a little fishy after what we saw late last week. Maybe the 49ers aren't very good. Maybe they are. I don't know. But regardless, 11 points, Tommy, 11 points for the Packers at home. Are you taking that line?
Absolutely not. No shot am I taking that line. That is way too many points for a team that did what they did last week against the Saints. They didn't score. They haven't scored a touchdown in the season yet. How can you ask them to win by 2 touchdowns at this point? The Lions are bad. Green Bay is nobody knows what they are right now. We're going to see if Aaron Rodgers comes out like. We'll see if Jordan Love plays. I don't even know. That's what. There's too many question marks right now. There's too much of a mystery for me to take a line that big. So even though I think Green Bay wins, and I think that they win pretty handily, I don't think that I have zero confidence in taking that point spread.
Yeah, I have zero confidence in it either, but I'm going to do it anyway because the Lions are the worst team in the league. I still think the Packers have the potential to be one of the best teams in the league. I don't know. It's not what I'm going to bet because the line is so high, but definitely think the Packers could cover this and get it done. I think it's an easy victory. It's at home. I don't think the Lions are going to surprise us, and the Lions may be the next team on my or the Packers. Who am I putting up there? The team that just proved me wrong. So if I take the Packers here, I got to get a Lions something to put up on my wall of shame to remind me of all the bad picks I've made, but I'm staying off this game probably in terms of betting just because the line is so high. But if I was picking it for the pod, I'm going to take the points in the Packers. Give me all those 11. I think they can win by a couple touchdowns, whatever. I mean, the 49ers should have. The 49ers had it in the bag. There was like halfway through the third quarter, they were up like 30 points. So
3 minutes left in the game. They're up by 24 or 25 points and just
fair enough. I guess
blew it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think the Packers are better than the 49ers. I know they didn't show it last week, but I don't know. I think the Saints are a good team, and the Packers weren't ready to show what they had, and they were just saving it because they knew the Lions is a layup in the week number 2.
This game feels like a trap to me on both sides. If you saw the Lions and what they did, and especially if you happen to think the 49ers are in the better half, like maybe a playoff team in the NFC, then Lions are getting 11 points. But I also kind of think that that's what Vegas wants you to do. I don't know. I'm going to take the Lions and the points, but I'm not going to touch the game in real life. I would tease this. I would tease it down. Like, there's a couple of games with pretty big spreads. We're going to talk about one right after this. I would, put it in a 3-team teaser, get the Packers down to, say, 5 points. I liked it better. When I looked at it yesterday, they were at 10.5 points. And I could have gotten a tease somewhere around 4.5. I like that. If you can get it that low, maybe a 7-point tease or something like that, I would consider taking the Packers. But 11 is a lot of points, even against a really bad team like the Lions, a team that we think is really bad despite what they did at the end of that game last week. But show it to me, Aaron Rodgers. Show it to me. I'm going with the Lions and the points. Shoot, Tommy.
I have two things. My pick is already locked, but I will say that even though they quote unquote came back last week, the 49ers still covered. So that doesn't bode well for me. The other thing is there is a Jamal Williams revenge narrative here. So if you're looking for, and he played pretty well last week and had there's going to be a check down king. So if he's still appropriately priced on DFS, he might be a little flyer for you to take to spend up elsewhere.
Love it. I love the Nuggets here.
Excellent points, Tommy. Thank you for making a case against yourself.
I know.
Love to hear it.
All right, moving on. This is the biggest spread of the week. All fans here of the Cleveland Browns this season, they are at home favored by 12.5 points over the Houston Texans, who I think were the surprise team. Well, surprise-ish. They're a surprise to me. Everybody else on this podcast bet them but me. But they looked better than we thought they would, even against a Jaguars team that is probably pretty bad. But, Karl, can the Browns cover 12.5 points at home against Tyrod Taylor and the Houston Texans?
Maybe. I don't know. Again, this is another one where it's like too high to pick. It seems like it's going to be pretty spot on. I don't know. The Browns had their Super Bowl last week, so this could be a letdown game where they just overlook this Texans team. Even though the Texans won last week, they know that they're one of the worst teams in the league, or at least by my rankings, they're one of the worst teams in the league. So do they get it done straight up? Yes, 100%. Maybe 95% of the time, I'll leave myself that 5% wiggle room here just so I don't have to buy so many different shirts to put on this wall. But if I'm going to pick a side, I'll go Texans covering the big spread. I don't know. Give me the points on that one. It's too high. I'm not a fan of either one of these teams in terms of personal preference. I do think the Browns are good. I think they're at the top of the rankings. They should get it done. Maybe they save some energy for next week and give the Texans a chance to keep it in the game.
You do have to watch out for the backdoor cover. Always a concern, especially if they're up big late. The Lions almost pulled that off against the 49ers last week. This is definitely a game that I could see being a blowout for most of it, and then the Texans coming back to cover against the Browns. But Tommy, what do you think? Who are you taking?
Speaking of revenge narratives, and I was saying last week that Tyrod he's done well in spurts when he's been given the opportunities, and this is another. He was traded to the Browns for a third-round pick, and then he once again got injured, lost the job to Baker Mayfield, and I think he's going to have a little bit of added motivation there. And even though I do think the Browns win by 10, I think the line is too big, so I'm with Karl. I'm to give me Houston in the points, even though I think the Browns win comfortably.
I should take the Texans. 12.5 is a lot of points, even against a team as good as I think that the Browns are. But what I'm most afraid of is a backdoor cover, and I think that can happen. So if I'm thinking with my head here, it makes sense to take the Texans. But I really do think that this is going to be a blowout, and I don't feel good doing this. But for the sake of it, I'm going to go with the Browns. Give me the Browns. I think they can win by 2 touchdowns or a touchdown and 2 field goals. They can make that happen. I would be sweating it if I bet it, which is why I'm not. But I talked about that teaser when I talked about the Packers. Toss the Browns in there this week. Packers -11, Browns -12.5. And we're going to talk about this one a little bit later. But the defending world champs, 1-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, also right now -12. That's a nice 3-team teaser if you want to bring those lines down. If I'm touching this game, that's probably what I'm going to do it. But you know what? Show it to me, Browns. Show it to me. You look pretty good in week 1 against the Chiefs. That's a tough game. I'm not going to hold it against you for losing, even though you kind of choked it away at the end. But go blow out a bad team. That's what good teams do, right? They blow out the bad teams. They get the dubs where they need to. Give me the Browns this week to cover a massive spread. I'm going to look like a fool on this podcast for doing that next week, but I'm running with it. All right, moving on. We talked a lot about the San Francisco 49ers already. They're on the road going to Philadelphia, taking on the Eagles. The 49ers favored by 3.5 points. I started off the pod a little bit earlier by asking you, Tommy, if the Eagles are legit, and you told me yes. So who are you taking? Eagles at home with 3.5 points. What's your pick?
This is the easiest bet of the week. It's the Eagles. The 49ers left a sour taste in my mouth with how they let the Lions just go back into that. Raheem Mostert is injured. The Eagles look really, really good. And I think that they're going to carry that momentum, especially because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think last week was in Philly, was it? Or
No.
was it? Yeah, opening first game of the season at Lincoln Field with fans back in the stadium. Give me the points. Give me the Eagles all day.
This is tough because I think that the 49ers are better than they showed last week, but not really good overall. Like, I don't think they're the team that went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
No.
At all. I think there's too much controversy right now between Jimmy G and Trey Lance, and whether or not the 49ers even wanted to take Trey Lance and actually wanted to take Mac Jones, and there was some kind of weird stuff going on, and now everybody hates everybody for trading up and losing all those assets. So I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. But I also told you last week that I think the Eagles are really bad. And so I'm going to stick to my guns here because I think the Falcons are just worse. That much worse. Prove me wrong, Jalen Hurts. I'm taking the 49ers minus 3.5 on the road in Philadelphia. Karl Mann, what's your take on this game?
I think the line's pretty good at 3.5. It could be maybe somewhere at like 49ers -5, and I think it's probably a good line. Obviously, that's not a line I would want to touch, so if I can get it at 3.5, perfect, I'll take it. Typically on the side of getting the points here, so, my brain would probably say take the Eagles and the points, but 49ers blew out a bad team, so did the Eagles. I think that, with the 49ers being a little bit of a better team here, I'll take them in this spot.
I will say I'm a little shocked at that for a home dog. I'm all alone once again on Dollar Bill Island.
Shocking revelation or not, Tommy seems to be alone on these islands a lot. And based on what happened last week, I don't know, maybe you should be following his bets and not ours.
It might be a destination location for some people that want to invest.
A destination investment. I love it. Speaking of destinations, the Saints are on the road after not really having a home game, but still taking care of business last week. So the New Orleans/Jacksonville Saints are going to Carolina this week to face a Panthers team that can we even say they ground out a win against the Jets? They almost choked away a win against the Jets. But the Saints are favored by 4 points heading into Carolina. The over-under here is 44 points. I don't know if that means we think there's going to be a lot of defense or if that means that the Panthers are just that bad and probably that the Saints defense is just that good. But Karl, what do we think about New Orleans here -4 on the road?
Yeah, so this is kind of what I've been alluding to the whole time with overreactions from week one, where you see a team blow out another team that shouldn't have happened, or a team that shouldn't have won wins against a team that is better than them, and then the lines overreact for week two. So I think this is a perfect scenario where you want to go against a team that blew out a team the week before. So I'm going to take Carolina at home with the points. Carolina didn't play a good team against the Jets. The Saints played a good team, and the Packers blew them out. I think everyone and their mother is going to go bet this game for the Saints, saying there's no way that they could beat the Packers and not beat the Panthers. So I'm going to take the opposite side of that and where I expect people to be betting, and I'm going to take the Panthers and the points.
Everything in my head disagrees with you because I think the Panthers almost lost to a really bad team, and the Saints blew out what we think is a really good team. I don't understand why this line is as low as it is. This, I think, could easily be over a touchdown. like that 7.5-point spread that we saw the 49ers open with last week against the Lions. There are also some other massive spreads on the book this week. We talked about it. Packers 11, Browns 12.5, Bucks 12, Saints at Panthers. I know it's a road game, so bring it back to New Orleans. Maybe we're looking at 7 to 10 points, and that's where I'm getting my numbers here. And I understand the prove it to me Jameis factor completely, because I do agree that he still needs to prove it and continue to prove it every week of the season until there's no more questions to be asked. But I just feel like that line should be higher. I feel like the Saints can take care of business. And I don't think Sam Darnold's very good. I think he's going to be better because he has a change of scenery and he's not in the Jets organization, which might be the worst in football. But against this New Orleans defense, 4 points feels easy. But whenever Vegas sets a line like that, it gives me pause. I was worried about the Ravens and Raiders on Monday night. I thought that should be an easy win for Baltimore, and we saw what happened. We've talked about it ad nauseum tonight. So I'm still going to take the Saints, but I'm going to be really uneasy about it. Tommy, what's your take?
I'm looking at what is a pretty big spread, and the over-under being only 44 means that I think Vegas agrees with me. The Saints' defense is legit. I do believe that. I think Jameis is headed for some heavy regression in the TDs department, considering he had 5 TDs and 14 completed passes. More than 1 of every 5 of his throws ended up in the end zone. I don't think that's going to happen again. And so I think that if that under is going to hit, which I do think it's going to hit, that means that just adds more. It's more likely that the Carolina Panthers will cover, considering the lower game score that we think that it's going to have, and I'm taking the Panthers with the points.
All right. 2 against 1. You guys are taking the Panthers. I don't see a world where they're good enough against that defense to get it done, but crazier things have happened. All right. Moving on. The Tennessee Titans, who looked like absolute shit last week, are going out to Seattle to face the Seahawks with the 12th man back in action. Seahawks only favored by 5 points. I don't know why that is, but Karl, are you taking the Titans in the points after what you saw last week?
Yeah, it's going to be tough to do it, and this is not a game I'm going to put money on, but pick for the pod will definitely be the points for the Titans. Again, this is just based on like the numbers and the value here, where it doesn't make sense to take that odd line number of 5. It's just like that middle ground where anything could happen, you know. They proved me wrong last week. Tommy was right on that side. Not sure where he's going to go with it as soon as I finish off my talking points here, but I am on the Titans. Would love to see Derrick Henry perform a little better for my fantasy team this week after a dud last week. So maybe this is the week where he picks it up and rushes for 150 yards and carries them to a victory, or at least carries them to a tie ball game at the end of the game, and lets the Seahawks go down and kick a field goal, and we still cover.
Tommy?
Yeah, I'm in. This is a tough boat to decide which one I want to get into, but I do think that the Seahawks are I'm gonna take the Seahawks. I'm gonna say that off the bat. I think the Titans are gonna show a more spirited effort, but I still don't like where their defense is at right now. I do think that I don't know about Derrick Henry bouncing back, but I do think that Julio Jones and AJ Brown are gonna have better showings. I think Tannehill is a better passer, but I do think this 12th man is a big factor. But yeah, for now, I'm going to take the Seahawks. I'm not very confident in it, though.
Can you agree?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my pick for the Titans, but looking at like the comparison between last week and this week, and the Cardinals team is like a mini version of the Seahawks in a way, with the way that they play. So I don't know. I'm still going to pick the Titans here, but again, this is a game that I'm staying off of just for those reasons, where I don't have like a set pick in mind where I'm confident about. So I'm going to pick the Titans, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if the the offense for Seattle performs very similar to how the offense for Arizona did last week in a similar situation.
So this is a tough pick for me because I think there's a couple of things going in Tennessee's favor. One, just kind of that prove it to me factor. I mean, they got embarrassed after, they have high expectations. They brought Julio in. Everybody's praising them. And so, maybe we should have seen it coming with them failing to live up to those expectations. But there's a prove it to me factor here. They were in Arizona last week, so they've, jet lag is no longer an excuse unless they flew back and forth across the country, which I have no idea if they did that, but I just assume that they stayed on the West Coast. That would make the most sense. So they're ready to go, whereas Seattle is actually the one that had to do more travel leading into this game, although they are sleeping in their own beds. And then the COVID factor. We talked last week, Tommy, you specifically talked last week about how COVID had ravaged the Titans this preseason, and that was part of what led you to pick the Cardinals against them in week 1. We're moving on from that. So there's a lot in favor for the Titans. I can't believe I'm going to pick against Russell Wilson in September 2 weeks in a row, but give me the Titans and the points here. God, I'm going to look so stupid, but everything tells me that the Titans can pull this off because I believe in the Titans. Tommy.
I do just have to say and point out that last week's game was in Tennessee, so they are traveling.
Fuck. Okay, great.
I wanted to let you know that before you locked it in.
Give me Russell Wilson. I'm not picking against him 2 weeks in a row. 5 points is nothing. I'm taking the Seahawks. The Titans have to travel. Can't be good for COVID. Give me Russ. Let Russ cook. Let Russ cook. I'm changing the pick. I'm taking the Seahawks. And we're moving on to Vikings at Cardinals. I think the Vikings were maybe our biggest disappointment of the week, mostly because I decided to toss them into our fun little parlay of the week that we all bet. They let us down tremendously. I was foolish enough to think that the Vikings defense could actually show up on a consistent basis, let alone in week 1. That was my mistake, although the offense looked pretty good, okay? So maybe if Kirk Cousins doesn't get sacked by Chandler Jones 5 times this week, maybe the Vikings can fare a little bit better against the Cardinals. This feels like a classic shootout, though. Cardinals at home, favored by 4.5, with the Vikings coming in for their second straight road game. Karl, I don't even know what to make of this. What do you think?
Another game where the line seems pretty spot on at 4.5, which sucks because it makes it tough to pick. So probably a game that we're staying off of. I think the lines, again, I've got it at 4-7 in favor of the Cardinals. So if I had to pick, I have a slight advantage for the Cardinals there, probably because they're at home. A couple points for the home field advantage. But, I don't know. I think the defense for Arizona, if they show up, it's going to be a tough team if they can put everything together every single week. I mean, obviously, that's the goal for every single team in the league. But if they can bring a defense and allow Kyler Murray to just open it up on the offense and make some plays. The one thing that does worry me is the offensive line for Arizona. It seems like Kyler Murray is running around for his life trying to make some plays, especially like that highlight throw to, I think, Hopkins maybe. I don't know. There were a couple plays where he had to scramble for his life to make some things happen, which is something that he's got the ability to do. So if he can hang in there and make some plays and move the ball downfield, I'm not too high on Kirk Cousins.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that the biggest detriment to Kirk Cousins is that he is not very good at surveying the field and moving. And if he's going through his reads, he's a statue back there, which if you have Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt bearing down on you, not a good combination in my opinion. So I am taking the Cardinals even at -4.5. I think that they are going to. It also could be recency bias because I also was high on the Vikings to enter the year, and they did not look good against Cincinnati. But two road games to start the season against Kyler, second one against Kyler Murray. I'll take the Cardinals.
I'm willing to jump back on the bandwagon, but for now I'm out on the Vikings. They hurt my feelings immensely, and they lost me a lot of money. And Kyler Murray just looked too damn good. So give me the Cardinals to cover this 4.5 points. Arizona all the way. All right. Couple of games left on the schedule here for us to talk about. Let's fly through them, boys. Our New England Patriots on the road facing the New York Football Jets. Over under there is 42.5 points. Patriots, big number to cover. We're higher on them than they performed last week. But Karl, can they cover a 6-point spread in the second career start for Mac Jones?
The fan in me says yes. The mathematician, the statistician in here, says it's probably not a good number to take. So I would take the points for the Jets. I won't bet it because even though I should bet smart, I don't like to bet against my home team. So I probably won't bet. I'll probably find another way to bet this game where I can bet some Patriots players, maybe taking the Patriots in the first half, or maybe seeing how the line plays out and how the game's going and take some things in the second half. But if I was picking straight up full game, I'll take the Jets and the points, which is going to make a lot of people up here in Syracuse pretty happy. I work with a couple Jets fans, so they'd be happy to hear them going to pick the Jets against my home team, Patriots.
Tommy, do you agree?
I'm actually in the same boat. Even though I am still super confident in the Patriots, I think that they win that game if they don't make a couple sloppy plays. I don't think that they are as bad defensively as Carolina is to allow the Jets back into that game last week. With all that said, on the road, 6 points is a lot for this Patriots team that's still very green. So I am going to be a little bit safer and take the Jets this time and not try to look through my Homer glasses.
I am going to disagree with you guys and just say that Mac Jones impressed the hell out of me last week. This kid is legit. It's going to take him time. Like, he's not going to be a Pro Bowl quarterback in year one, I don't think. There's going to be an adjustment, and the Patriots are certainly going to run the ball a lot this year, which poses trouble in and of itself because as high as I think we all are on a lot of the depth of that running back committee, the ceiling might not be what we want it to be, especially if they can't hold on to the ball. But I will say this, Mac Jones is the real deal.
Yep.
Just watching him stand in there, throw a touchdown while getting hammered, what he did against pressure, what he did on third down. He did everything right, and we talked about it last week. All he has to do is manage the game. I think the Jets just suck. Zach Wilson looked pretty good, but they also just lost their left tackle. He's not going to play. He might not even play again this season, although it sounds like he's avoiding season-ending IR. But regardless, he's not going to be there on Sunday. I think that the Patriots can cover. So I'm going to take Mac Jones and the New England Patriots to win by at least a touchdown this week. Give me the Pats to cover, -6.
I hope you're right.
I hope
you're right
too.
also.
All right, moving on. The Cincinnati Bengals, who, can we say they surprised us against the Chicago Bears? The Bears are at home, favored by 2.5 points. Over under here is 45. Vegas doesn't know what to make of this game. They just had to pick a favorite, so they went with what really should be a better defense in the Bears. Tommy, what do we think? Can Andy Dalton get revenge against his former team in Chicago?
So I was just going to say, do we know who's starting for the Bears? Because we talked up Justin Fields, and he looked good when they brought him in. And I think that it does not do the Bears any good if he's on the bench and Andy Dalton is playing football. So with that in mind, if it's still Andy Dalton, I think the football gods look down on this, and I'm gonna pick the Bengals here. I will say with the caveat that if Justin Fields starts, people should take the Bears, but for the purposes of the pod, I'm going to take the Bengals right now because Andy Dalton is the presumed starter.
Karl, do you agree? You like the points on the road?
No, I'm taking the points for the home team in this one. I'll give up a couple points. it is a toss-up game. Again, like the only advantage here would be home field advantage. But I do think the revenge game plays a factor. And Andy Dalton, I mean, even though he's a couple of years removed from playing for the Bengals, I think it's a good opportunity for him to, kind of spit back on his team that didn't really help him do much over the course of his career. So, I don't know. Either quarterback that starts for me, I think I'd be on the Bears in this situation. I think if it stays under a field goal, I'm definitely taking it. If it gets up to 3.5, I'll probably stay off it. I still think the Bears is my pick here, but again, that's something I might consider taking if it stays under 3 as an actual bet for me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you. So for all of our millions of fans listening, go out and bet this game if you're going to do it before everyone betting on this because of our advice shifts the line. If you can get the Bears under a field goal, I think you have to do it because I just believe in that defense. I just happen to also think that the Rams in general, from a talent perspective, are that much better. Andy Dalton does suck. Justin Fields is a rookie quarterback, so how much of a difference does it make? I don't know, but either way, I think the line's low enough that I believe the Bears can cover 2.5 at home. Karl, what else do you have?
Yeah, I think you just touched on it perfectly with that overreaction of the Bears getting blown out by a really good team and the Bengals showing up against an average team in the Vikings. And I think there's going to be a little overreaction with like how bad the Bears are versus how good the Bengals are from winning their game last week. So, again, another game where I think they're trying to trap you with a number that they're like, oh, positive number here, or I can get plus points for the Bengals. Everyone's going to hammer it. I don't think it's the right move here. So, again, I'm going to be happy to be on the other side with the Chicago Bears, hopefully.
All right, put it in the books. Last game of this barely watchable schedule, the awful Atlanta Falcons are actually at home taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are favored by 12 points. As good as the Bucs are and as bad as the Falcons are, Tommy, can Tampa cover?
So for the other two really, really, really large spreads this week, I took the points. This is the one that I think Tampa Bay is going to win in a wash. This is arguably the best team versus arguably the worst team. Give me it could be higher, and I would probably still be more confident in taking the Bucs. So even at -12, give me the Bucs to cover easy.
Yeah, I do agree. I have the Falcons as I'm looking at it here, my 29th ranked team, so fourth from the bottom, but that's only less than a percentage point away from the Lions at 32. So the bottom handful of teams, I think, are all very, very close together at the bottom, and any one of them could be labeled as the worst team in the league. So Tampa Bay up at the top, right there with the Chiefs, almost neck and neck. So I don't know. The big spread does scare you a little bit, but and I mean, if you're willing to take it, if you're willing to throw some money on the line, I don't see how the Bucs give up 2 bad games to start the season. I think they got their bad game out of the way on opening night against the Cowboys. I think they're going to show up, take out a little bit of that frustration on the Falcons, and then move on to next week.
I talked about it earlier. The biggest thing that I'm afraid of here is the backdoor cover. I mean, listen, it's not the Patriots, but Tom Brady historically, he's certainly been in his fair share of winning sides for blowout games. But how many times over the years did we see a Tom Brady-led team just let that backdoor cover in? You kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit, like you do what you need to do to run down the clock and win the game. I don't think there's any world, unless a meteor strikes or God forbid somebody gets injured, that the Falcons could win this game. But with that little extra bit of bulletin board material, we saw Tom Brady kind of trolling. You guys didn't see it in his Twitter video earlier this week, where he talked about, he's celebrating his win in week 1, and then on the clock over his shoulder, it was 3:28 p.m., of course, calling back the 28-3 lead that the very same Falcons blew in the Super Bowl. There's bulletin board material. I'm afraid of a backdoor cover. I'm afraid of a backup quarterback that I couldn't even name before this podcast coming in and just allowing the Falcons back into this game because they can't run the offense. So I'm going to pick the Falcons to cover for the pod. But in real life, I'm not betting this game. I've talked about it a couple of times now. I'm going to be looking to put this game into a teaser. If I can get the Bucs at a lower number than 6, I'm going to feel better about it. In general, I never feel good taking a spread that high, even for a team as good as the Bucs and as bad as the Falcons. So give me the Falcons and the points for the sake of our betting this week.
I will say historically betting against Tom Brady with the Falcons is a good call. So good job.
I'm going to regret this entirely because I'm also the kind of person that likes to just have a little bit of fun, bet with my heart, pick my fantasy team with my heart. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Logically, that doesn't really make sense. So for all the reasons I said, as good as Tom Brady and the Bucs are, I don't know. I'm worried about the backdoor cover. 12 points is a lot. It's not that hard to make up ground late in the game. Yeah, I'm taking the points. All right, 2 more games on the schedule. The Broncos -6 on the road facing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who look terrible. Although I'm not really convinced that the Broncos are that good. Karl, what do we think? Are you taking the points for the Jaguars?
Yeah, I think I'm going to. I don't love it. I think there is some value on taking the points there. Again, could be another overreaction game where people saw how well the Broncos played and how bad the Jaguars played. So maybe some value in the line there. My formula here kind of makes the spread at 3.5. So if I can get 6 points, I'll take it.
Tommy, do you agree?
No, I'm going to take the Broncos here because this is a similar. Even though the Broncos, they beat up on a bad team last week in the Giants, but they are facing yet another bad team again this week. And I'm sticking with my word that I think that the Broncos are going to be one of the most improved teams this year. So even though it's a larger line, I will absolutely take the Broncos to cover.
I'm going to take the Jags only because I think 6 points is too much for what I really believe is probably a mediocre Broncos team to cover. Trevor Lawrence at times looked bad, but he also at times looked decent, better than decent. We know that he's a good quarterback, or we believe that he's a good quarterback. He has been a good quarterback. That's why he went number 1 overall. That's why he is the hyped up prospect that he is. I don't know. It's less about faith in the Jaguars than it is about a lack of faith of the Broncos covering a high number. 6 is too much for me, so I'm going to take the points in the Jags and see if Trevor Lawrence can air it out and keep it close, even late. All right, last game of the week, which also happens to be the first game on the Week 2 schedule. This is our Thursday night matchup. The New York Giants facing the Washington football team in Washington. The football team is favored by 3 points, despite the fact that they lost starting quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick earlier this week. Actually, what did he play? About 1 or 2 series, if that, the first quarter in week 1. I actually am of the belief that they should have let Taylor Heineke compete for the job. I think he could be pretty good. I liked what I saw out of him, a lot of kind of moxie. I think he just jumped out and scared the Buccaneers in the wild card round of the playoffs last year. Does that mean he's a good quarterback? I guess we're going to find out, boys. So, Karl, what do we think? Washington -3 at home. How do we feel about it?
I don't know. -3. Is that 3 for the home field advantage? Is this a straight-up toss-up? Yeah, probably. Thursday Night Football, short week. I like to take the home team. Just makes it a little bit easier. Get in, get out, have the rest of the time to recover. I feel like probably going to stay off this game unless I get a little bit more research in by kickoff, and we'll see where the line's at. But not something I'm jumping on right away. I'm just probably going to take the Washington football team for this for the podcast, but we'll see if I actually put anything on it as we get closer to kickoff.
How many do you agree?
I do agree, and I was saying before the pod that they lost Fitzpatrick, which was a big loss. But you are absolutely correct in that Heineke is a gamer. You also have to watch over the fact that Saquon was limited in his return from injury and the short turnaround, which means they're probably going to continue to limit him and just take advantage of the long break they have coming up. I think this is an overreaction, smaller line for what is a middling at worst team in my opinion in Washington and a bad team in the Giants. And so if it's only 3 points, I would give you the middling team, which is Washington.
The Giants suck. Daniel Jones blows, and he doesn't have his offensive weapons, or at least not healthy. Thursday night, home team. Give me the football team. I legitimately believe in that defense. I'm taking the football team. And that closes out our Week 2 NFL schedule. So, with that said, we've covered every game in the NFL. So now we are here to give you our favorite picks of the week. So, similar to last week, if you are unfamiliar or if you forgot, we're going to do a little snake-style draft here, 3 rounds between the 3 of us. We are picking 3 separate games in the first round. We can't pick the same game in any round. We're going to snake those picks, and you get 3 points for your really number 1 overall, your first round pick, 2 points for your second, 1 for your third. That, of course, means you have to win those picks, which none of us did very well last week. A little recap there. The only winner was, there were 3 winners. I took the 49ers, 7.5. I almost blew that, but that was my first round lock. So I got 3 points there. And then we had a lot of losers in a row. Tommy had the Broncos -3 covering, so he gets a point. And Karl also had the Rams -7.5. They took care of business. So he also got a point. So if we are keeping score at home, despite a horrible overall record for myself, I am in the lead in our little draft game here, 3-1. Tommy and Karl have 1 point. So I'm going to dive right in because I believe I have the first pick this week. Mm-hmm. You know what? This is crazy that we're doing this 2 weeks in a row. Give me the Washington football team, -3, Thursday Night Football at home. That's my first round pick. Lock it in. Karl, let's go.
My pick would have been the Washington football team. I almost said their former name, so glad I didn't do that. My pick is going to be the Chicago Bears, actually, at home with the Bengals. We already touched on why I kind of like that team. So, yeah, give me the Bears there with some points.
So I had 2 favorite games, and now with the back-to-back picks, I get to pick both of them. It just decides which one I'm more confident in, and that would be the Cowboys is the first one. Give me, especially with the points, I think they're going to win outright anyways, but with the points, I will take that. And then also, I'm going to just stick with the theme of taking the points and give me the Dolphins over the Bills at +3.5.
Wow.
So that'll be my second pick. Shout out to your hat.
That's right. I'll let you wear it if they win.
Thanks.
I'll have to overnight it. It's coming back around to me, and I think I'm going to just work my way down my list here of value and pick the Los Angeles Rams. Give me the Los Angeles Rams.
That's a good one.
Yes, thank you. I think the line's all right for some confidence here. It's got some value. I feel like 3.5 is a tough line again with that hook, but we'll see what we got. Pat?
All right, am I allowed to pick? I just explained the rules. I'm going to ask you guys what the rules are. Can I pick the opposite line of a game in a different round than when somebody picked it? All right, then I am
just not the first round.
Great. Then I am going with the Buffalo Bills. I'm going with the Buffalo Bills because I think they're going to take care of business even on the road in Miami with my second round pick. And to wrap it up in the third, I am going to take the New England Patriots to cover, also on the road. Probably foolish, but we're only going to put We're only going to risk 1 point on it. So give me the Bills in the second round and the Patriots in the third. And
Is it back to me?
Yeah.
My third pick.
Quickly.
Golly. Let's go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For 1 point, why not? Let's roll the dice. I'll take all those points there. I know it's going to be a lot to cover, but give me the Bucs.
I'm gonna stick with my theme of a home dog here. To round out this draft. Give me the Eagles at plus 3.5. I think that they are just that good that they're gonna once again. I think it's another team that wins outright. So if they have extra points for me to play with, I will take that and hopefully garner 6 points this week.
All right. Just to recap, we are taking in the first round. I took the Washington football team to cover on Thursday Night Football. Carl's taking the Chicago Bears, and Tommy likes the Cowboys on the road. He's also going to jump right in there in the second round, taking the Dolphins. Karl likes the Rams. I like the Bills on the road. I also like the Patriots on the road because I think the Jets suck. Karl is putting his YOLO bet for this pick on the Bucs. And Tommy loves the Eagles. So those are our 9 picks there, our favorite picks of the week. Which means we are on to our parlay. We almost won last week, boys. Really kind of no rules here. This is just a game that we're all confident on, and we're going to calculate the odds live here in the pod and let you know what kind of value you're getting if you decide to gamble what we pick. So, Karl, I'm going to toss it back to you. What do you want to take this week?
Cowboys straight up. I know Tommy just picked it for his pick for his best bets. I think they could win this game straight up, so we don't even want the points here. Let's go Cowboys money line.
Cowboys money line. I like it. Tommy, what do you think?
I was deciding between 2 games that I don't think either of you would like for me to pick, so I'm going to choose the one that I think is safer, and we're going to stick with the draft theme and the theme of the day for me, which is the Eagles straight up, plus odds against in a game that I think they're going to win. I will fall on the sword if we lose this parlay because I think that I'm going to make the riskiest bet.
I am struggling with a bet that I love this week, but I am legitimately confident in the Buffalo Bills. They have to be better than they looked last week. I think the Steelers are better than we gave them credit for. So I'm not even going to ask them to cover. I'm just going to take the Bills straight up money line, which is minus 1.5. And if we're also taking the Eagles, who are dogs this week. So again, just to recap, we are taking the Cowboys, who are underdogs, with the money line, the Eagles, who are underdogs, with the money line, and the Bills, who are favored straight up to win. Those 3 picks get us to plus 863, which means a $10 bet gets you just about an $85 win, if that's how you like to bet. Not bad value on teams that we feel pretty good about, boys. I like it. How do we feel going into week 2?
Surprisingly less confident than I was after week 1 when I was pretty good.
All right, well, that'll do it here for week 2 of the 3-Man Rush Pod. I never talked about our records, so we're just going to cut by letting you know that Tommy's in the lead. And we'll see you next week. Go gamble. Have fun, kids. Peace.
Peace. Have fun at your sports book.